Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Knit Chat. This is the second episode. I'm Claudia. I'm from Montreal, Quebec. So if my English accent seems to you to be a little bit funky, it's because it is. I'm French Canadian and I live with an American husband. People always ask me, "Where is your accent from?" And I have to say kind of a mix of bunch of things. So today I'm not alone here and I'm super excited to welcome Aimée from La Bien Aimée and Sasha from Sasha being herself amazing designer in Montreal, and Aimée is a yarn dyer, obviously from La Bien Aimée in France. And the reason we're all together here is because we kind of became this impromptu trio last year at Knit City Montreal. We ended up hosting the knit night there, and we had such a blast. It was so much fun, and they decided to re-invite us this year. So in 2 weeks, Knit City Montreal is happening for the second time, and we have a Friday night knit night we're hosting, and we are super excited about it. So I thought it'd be fine to have just a little discussion today before the event to just get to know Aimée and Sasha, and me too a little bit, I guess, because some of you are new on my channel. So here we go. How are you, girls?
Good. How are you? So
Um,
nice to
um
see and hear you all. It's been a
yeah,
while.
it's been a while, and right now we're also streaming from different parts of the world. So where are you, Aimée?
I am in my home. I live in Ivry-sur-Seine, which is just right on the border of Paris. Literally 50 meters down the end of my street is the limit of Paris. So it's
Oh,
very close to my studio. It's where we moved last fall, and we're really happy here.
that's great. And you, Sasha?
I am in Pierrefonds, Montreal, good old Quebec.
Yeah,
So
not
not
very
too
far
far
from me.
from you.
Yeah,
Other side
cool.
of the highway.
So, yeah, I wanted to invite you over to have a little chat. And I have a few questions that I kind of put together, thinking that people that are listening to this podcast would like to know a little bit more about you. So, first thing that I like to ask every knitter is, how did you start knitting? What was your motivation for starting, and when was that? So, maybe let's start with Aimee.
I learned to knit from my mom. It wasn't the first thing that I learned to do from my mom. I remember being very young and I learned to cross stitch. It was either my grandmother or my mother who taught me. And then my mother was knitting all the time. And I asked her, I kept asking her, I think I was probably 6 or 7, saying, Mom, teach me to knit. And she was like, Yeah, I'll teach you. But she was busy knitting for 5 kids, and she didn't want to stop knitting to teach me to knit. So then she saw that I could do cross stitch really well as a young child. And so she taught me how to seam her knitting. So she would knit the sweater parts and then show me how to do mattress stitch. She always made us sweaters in a kind of a DK worsted weight. Think of like Cascade 220, that kind of yarn. And it was really easy for me because I understood exactly how to use the needle and the yarn, and I was doing mattress stitch. And after she esteemed that I was doing a good job, then she taught me to knit.
You were
And
worthy.
she always reminded me too when I was knitting that finishing was just as important as knitting, which is very true because you could knit something and then if you don't finish it properly, wah, wah, it doesn't look so good. So
That
that's when I learned to knit, was about maybe 7 or 8 years old. And then I didn't pick up my knitting again until I was later in my 20s. I was a teenager. I grew up and I was doing sports and other things. So I want to say that I've officially was back to being a knitter again in my 20s.
was there something that motivated you to pick up the needles again?
Well, yes, actually, I had just moved to France after marrying my husband. And I remember calling my mom one day. This was back before we had like FaceTime and Skype didn't even exist.
We're so
And
old, right?
and I called her from a payphone, and I remember talking to her, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I'm really lonely. It's like really hard to meet people here in Paris. And my mom says, go to the yarn shop. She's like, why don't you find a yarn shop? You know how to knit. Go to the yarn shop, buy some yarn, and meet somebody. And I did. That day I went to the Bon Marché, and I met this woman who worked there. She set me up with yarn for a project. And from then on, she became my friend, and I met all these other knitters, and that's how I restarted my knitting adventure.
I love it. It's such a beautiful like community
Yeah.
story because like I think that a lot of newer knitters started knitting in the need to connect with other people during pandemic time, and like there was a lot of the knitting in the house by yourself alone
Yeah.
happening, but now we're like all kind of wanting to get back to this community feeling, and Knit City is like coming up, and those events are bringing us back together. That's super cool. Thank you, Aimee,
Very
for
excited.
sharing that. And for you, Sasha?
So for me, my love of knitting started a lot later in life. Actually, my love for crochet started before my love for knitting. So my grandmother taught me how to crochet. She'd made me this stunning Afghan blanket when I was like in my early mid-teens. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. How did you do it? And that's when she just sat me down. She gave me a hook. She's like, here's a hook, here's a yarn, and you do it like this. So I'm like, okay. And then I started to do what I thought was what she was doing. And then she looked at me. She's like, why are you holding it like you have two left hands? I'm like, but that's just the way I know how to do it, you know? And I'm like, my stitch came out the exact same way that her stitches came out. And it was just so funny. She's like, you're not doing it. You're not holding your hook properly. You're not holding the yarn properly. Like, how are you getting this result? I'm like, that's just the way it is. And like, ever since, you know, that stuck with me. When I teach other knitters, I'm like, listen, you don't have to do it the way that I do it. You have to find the way that's comfortable for you. As long as you get the end result, that's what's important.
Mhm.
So yeah, I started crocheting, I want to say around 15, 16 years old. And I did that for years in secret because I never knew anybody else who did it. You know, it was not a very popular thing back in the day. And then I taught myself how to knit afterwards because I realized there's so many more interesting patterns and techniques out there with knitting than just with the crochet. And yeah, so that's my story, and I've been knitting and crocheting ever since. I knit more now than I crochet, but I still love a good crochet hook, just like you, Amy, for like finishings and here and there. Like
Yeah.
it's just, I love it.
I've been on a crochet kick kind of lately. Like
Yeah,
I've been seeing things that I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. Like I remember, like you, Sasha, when I started knitting, I don't know, I would look at the, like I knew how to do basic crochet stitches because my
mm,
roommate showed me when I was in cégep. And for people that are not from Quebec, cégep is between like high school and university here in Quebec. So I had this roommate who crocheted, so she just showed me basic stitches and just did scarves. But then when I was looking at, items, all the items that caught my eyes were knitted.
same,
Like the
same,
texture of knitting was more
exactly.
appealing to me. But then now, right now, I'm having such a crochet moment. I'm like, I want to crochet the things. I'm like, I'm knitting I'm crocheting a little like summer dress right now. And it's just so
Dude,
pretty, but maybe people changed the yarn with which they're crocheting now. Like I feel like I see a lot more crochet items that are not made with the acrylic or the cotton only. I'm seeing
Mhm.
like wool being crocheted and
Mhm.
maybe
Hand dyed yarn.
more. Huh?
yes,
And
hand
more
dyed
like
yarn.
hand dyed yarns.
Yeah, exactly. And it
Yeah,
makes it as interesting
Yeah.
as what caught my eyes for knitting, I guess.
yeah,
Maybe.
absolutely.
Very cool. Well, speaking of designs, Sasha, would you like to tell us like what made you dive into design? Because you have those amazing designs now
Oh my gosh,
popping out, and
so many more
what
to
made
come.
yeah, what made you kind of want to design your own stuff?
Well, I've kind of basically always been designing since the get-go, right? Since I first started to learn how to knit, because when my grandmother taught me, she never read patterns. She never showed me a pattern to be like, these are the instructions. This is what you need to do from step A to Z. She's just like, no, she would just sit there and I would watch her and just pick it up.
Mhm.
And as a self-taught knitter, similarly, same thing. I just looked at a pattern, I looked at a stitch, and I'm like, okay, let's figure this out. Eventually, I taught myself how to read patterns, obviously. But so I started designing from the very, very, very beginning. And
And which design did you think, okay, this is worth kind of sharing with the world? Because you still, even if you're designing for
yeah,
yourself, you have to write it down, and that's the
that's a tricky
tedious
part,
part.
right? The first pattern that I ever hit publish on was a sweater that I designed for my daughter. And it's called the Avery, which is in Tarja, knit in the round, bottom up. So what a way to go to start for your first design.
Love it.
And
Uh,
I did that and I hit publish because when I was knitting stuff for I have two kids. I have my daughter who's 6 and my son who's 4. Um, I was looking for patterns to make for my kids. And there's so many girly patterns with the lace
Mhm.
and the frills and the this and the that. And because I had a son, and because knitting, it's so timeless, right? It's when you make a piece, a garment, you want to hold on to it for a little while. And yeah, kids, they grow out of their clothes so fast. But I wanted my garments that I made for my daughter to be useful for my son. And that's what brought on gender neutral designing. And
Nice.
that's why I hit publish for the first time
That's great.
I
with the
love that.
offering.
Speaking of designing, Aimee, I think you also were talking about a brand new design that you made. We can't show it to everybody that's listening, but maybe you can tell us what the techniques or what it is in general. And
Well, let me just preface that I've never put out a design. There is one design on Ravelry that I did when I had my cafe, and it was just a single color brioche cowl, and it's free on Ravelry. And I have always been interested in designing, but I just have been busy kind of doing other things.
no.
And I finally
Building an
I
empire, maybe?
prioritized some time this year to kind of put some ideas down on the knitted canvas, I guess. And I love wearing bandanas. I don't know if you see me whenever I'm traveling or I'm coming in from outside. I always have like a bandana around my neck. It's just like my little thing. Here in France, everybody wears scarves. There's always like a little scarf around the neck. And so I designed this knitted bandana. So it's just a knitted triangle. And while I was working out on the shape and the depth, I just did some impromptu intarsia. So this is all just really kind of going along the way, adding some intarsia, just playing with color and shapes, because I knew that if I was just going to knit this straight gray, I would have gotten really bored with it. And so this is my version 1. And then version 2 is it's still wet. I just pulled it off the blocking mat right here. So this one was really fun too. I was just playing with colors, and this is all intarsia all over. Just
So for the people that are listening right now, there's obviously some neutral color background with pops of color, amazing color in intarsia in that scarf. If you want to see it with your own eyes, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Clo Knits, and then you'll be able to see on video what Aimee just designed. But do you plan on releasing it soon?
yes, I'm working on it. It's being test knit right now. The standard stockinette triangle bandana will be released. And then I will start charting some of this intarsia. But some of the stuff that I did was really just impromptu, very organic. And so I'm
Mhm.
kind of thinking about a way to write a pattern so that people can just practice organic intarsia as they feel.
Yeah.
So it'll be like a guideline, not necessarily a pattern where there's like exact charting, but maybe just like kind of walking you through basic intarsia shapes.
Well,
So
it's a way
that's
for us to kind of become our own designer, be your own, create your own journey. But Intarsia
yeah.
has this fun ability to just, add in a color whenever, and that's why I think uh people being scared of knitting things in pieces, knitting things flat or whatever, it's too bad, because that allows you to be able to add in a color, because Intarsia is doable obviously in the round, but it's much more,
It's a little bit of a
intricate.
different technique.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Historically, intarsia has been knit flat, and also
exactly.
like as a knitter for as myself, my first sweaters were all knit flat and seamed. Like I told you, I learned how to seam,
Mhm.
and so me as a designer, I'm always thinking about in that kind of construction format in pieces. And I really enjoy the finishing process. So I'm trying to hope to get people to get on that little bandwagon with me.
I am there 100% with you. And I'm really hoping that other people come on our bandwagon too, because
Well, I
Intarsia
think
is
the
so fun.
I think it's kind of it's not even people themselves that are scared of the finishing. It's because when you start knitting nowadays, you are put into the in the round in one piece top down sweater thing, right? It's
Yeah.
what people kind of put out there the most. And so all of a sudden people are scared of the technique they've never done just because they've never done it, and not because they think they're going to be necessarily bad at it. It's other people telling them it's difficult or it's not fun, or it's, so if we put a little bit of positivity out there and tell people it's okay, you can try it and you'll be fine, you might even enjoy it.
Yeah,
Maybe that.
definitely.
Absolutely, because it's so much fun. Like you're saying, when you do it so organically, right? You play with like your little scraps here and there, a little leftover, a little splash of color on the canvas. That's the way I look at it in Tarja. You have your blank canvas, and you want to put a little color here, a little color there, a little design here, a little design there. That's how I look at Intarsia, as
Yeah.
that type
Yes,
of kind of color work, playing with a blank canvas.
Yeah, it's like painting a lot more
Yeah,
than
exactly.
other techniques.
Yeah.
exactly.
Speaking of techniques, I had this question for you. Is there one technique in particular that when you see, let's say you're browsing through patterns or things that you would like to knit, and then you see that this piece uses this technique? Is there one that you're like, no, this one I'm not down for. I'm not going to do it again. Been there, done that, hated it. Is there something?
I,
No?
if I see something, I see it, I like it, I want it, I make it.
Yeah,
Nothing
that's
intimidates
great.
me because I'm like, you have to try it, you know? And when it comes to intarsia knitting, modular knitting, like a lot of people are so like, oh my God, turning my work, how does that work? Like right now I'm designing a t-shirt and it's knit in the vertical. Like I'm gonna have a lot of vertical stripes all the way throughout.
Ooh.
Ooh.
So it's really, really cool. It's gonna have like 4 color changes, and I'm doing a lateral braid in the mix, you know, that's a new technique. I'm sure a lot of people are not familiar with the lateral braid with a basic stockinette. So it's gonna be really cool. You can see like the little, I know you can't
Yeah,
see it for everybody
but some
listening,
people can.
but
Yeah, that's great.
so
I
yeah.
love it because I'm like you, Sasha. When I see a different technique or something kind of intriguing, I'm all for trying it. Like I'll go
Yeah.
for it. And yeah, maybe sometimes I end up with something that I'm like, I did it. Maybe I it's not my favorite way of doing something, and maybe I won't do it again. But it's rarely because I hated it or like it was really difficult to do or something like that. What about you,
You know what's
Aimee?
so funny? I
Oh,
in a way, I kind of target those patterns that are a
yeah,
little bit more challenging because I wanna learn a new technique.
yeah,
I wanna
absolutely.
get as
Absolutely.
much knowledge under my belt as possible.
Hmm.
So
I love challenging patterns. If I have to say that there's patterns that I will avoid right now, is probably lace on both sides. So if there's lace pattern on the wrong side, I will probably say like, okay, I'm gonna pass on that right now. I am a knitter who's very adventurous. My second project was a sock. So like it was the tightest knit sock. I mean, I only did one because you couldn't even get it over my I couldn't get it over my foot. But you know what? I wanted to go through the whole process of knitting a sock, turning the heel, making the gusset, turning the heel, reducing, just doing the process. And something that I really love right now with social medias is the reels where people are showing their process. Not everyone casts on the same way, not everyone knits the same way. And sometimes I see a new way of, like, I don't know, weaving in the ends, or I saw somebody swatching in the round the other day, and they were using a technique of pulling the yarn across the length of the knitting, and I was like, what? I never thought to do that. And it's
Hmm.
so great because you just can learn so much through
Yeah.
social media now.
Yeah, with sharing knowledge from our grandparents, like we come from the generation where it came from our grandparents, and so we only knew what they knew, which was not much. And it was way enough for them for what they needed to do. And you can always get across, like you don't need 15 million ways to cast on in order to knit, but sometimes it's fun to change it up. And like
Yeah.
you say, you with social media, you see those things and you're very surprised. My French channel has, a lot of tutorials on it, and every day I get emails and comments from women that say, Claudia, I'm 80. I learned how to knit when I was a child, and you're teaching me so many things that I didn't even know existed because I've always just done it the way I knew how to do it. And some people are also saying, I never thought I could knit
Mm.
in the round, or I never thought I could, knit in this way because I've never learned it. But now at this old age, I can still like go on YouTube and find tutorials for new things. It's so rewarding because,
Yeah.
we're sharing our knowledge, and that's a lot of fun. So let's do just quick rapid fire questions for you. Okay, I wanted to have a little fun, and maybe you'll tell me there's no way I can decide, but we'll see. So first question: toe up or cuff down?
toe up.
Cuff down.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm a cuff down. I'll do the toe up, but I prefer the cuff down.
Mm.
Two, sweater or cardigan? Ooh.
I want to say up until this year, it's always been sweaters, but I just find myself hot all the time with my sweaters. Now I'm like looking at cardigans and kind of oversized. If I'm going to do a sweater now it's going to be kind of oversized sweater.
Yeah.
So just want to say I'm going to be wearing my new design by Sasha at Knit City Montreal.
Woohoo!
Cannot wait.
Exciting.
Yes. And it's
Uh,
oversized and perfect, and I love
oh,
it.
love it, love it. Are you doing a crop version too?
We did the crop version. It's done. So
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
you guys, if you see me at Knit City, come by and say hi, and I'll show you my new sweater. So
Yay.
For me, it's 50-50. I can't pick. Like right now, I'm wearing a super oversized like beach pullover.
Yeah.
And I loved it so much I had to make a cardigan too.
There you go.
I'm like,
I
I
love
don't
it.
know which one. It's really 50-50. I can't choose.
I'm a sweater person. I want to knit cardigans and I look at my wardrobe and I sometimes I want to pull out a cardigan and I have none. And I'm like, but every time I put a new pattern in my queue for knitting, it's a sweater, it's a pullover. And I'm like, Chloe, just go find the cardigans. There's so many pretty ones, but I don't know why I just go straight to the pullover all the time. I don't learn from my opening up my drawers and not finding cardigans. Okay, so that one was an Aimee prompt, but you're gonna hate me, but I'm gonna say if you had to choose neon or neutrals.
Oh man, neon.
Neutrals.
We're colorful girls, huh? I'm
You're also
well,
a neon.
yeah, I would go neon probably. Sasha would go neutrals.
100% neutral. 100%.
I just I just feel like I would get bored with the neutrals because I just wear so much
Neutrals go
bright
with
colors. And here I am wearing a
everything.
black sweater right now, but
Neon neutrals go with everything. Like every time it just goes with I know some neons do go with everything because neons can be considered neutrals as well.
yeah.
But I just think neutrals are just
Okay, and then if you could only choose one weight of yarn to knit with.
for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Ah,
I know my answer. I'll say it.
Go ahead.
Sport
Sport?
weight. Yeah.
I was gonna say fingering is too small, but I want something in between. But DK, I think I'd land on sport as well.
It's interesting because when I started knitting, I started knitting in 2009. Sport weight wasn't a thing. Like there was not much of it at all. And now all of a sudden there's so many beautiful sport weight patterns and sport weight yarn as well. And I would have before said fingering because I like knitting with the small needles, I don't know, there's something ergonomic about it that I love. My flow is really good with the fingering weight yarn. But you're right that sport is kind of this perfect,
In
just a
between.
bit bigger that will like get you through it a little bit faster.
Yep.
I like
Yep.
it. All right. And then let's do one more. Um what how many how many projects do you have laying around on your needles right now?
Oh.
Okay, let's put it this way. I use my go-to needles are 3.5s and 4s and 375. So 3.5. Sorry, I work in millimeters, everybody out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
3.5 millimeters, 3.75, and 4 millimeters. And I have about 5 sets of 3.5s, and they are all occupied as we speak.
I see. I
Okay.
see what you mean. Amy, do you have a
So,
lot of projects lying around?
No, I don't. I usually, if I have a project, I cast on and try to finish. This is also something as a much more mature knitter now that I've been knitting for over 20 years, I'm like this. But in the beginning, when I started knitting, I would cast on every new thing that came out on Knitty, every new thing that came out on Ravelry, But I have to say I'm like Sasha. I knit a lot with 3.5, 3.75, and 4,
Yeah.
and I have like 5 or 6 sets of those full of swatches. So like
yeah.
I don't know. I don't have any projects going on, but usually like right now I'm knitting these bandanas, and so I'm just kind of finishing them. It takes me about 2 days. So
Wow.
I just really enjoy just finishing it, or I'm swatching. So that's either all I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you have new things coming up for La Bien Aimée?
Well, we have a new colorway that we're going to debut at Knit City Montreal called Alba.
Ooh.
So it's a really beautiful kind of like, I don't, it's kind of a complex color. It's hard to say, kind of a deep raspberry wine color with some
Ooh.
speckles. And so it's a
You're talking
little,
my language.
yes. And so you should come by and see that. That'll be available at the Knit City Montreal booth. Obviously I'm going back on book tour. So May 17th, I'm flying straight to Montreal and kicking off the second part of my tour for Neons and Neutrals. And I'll be bringing the trunk show and my book with me.
That's awesome. Those patterns are so inspiring. Like I keep on seeing them pop up everywhere and I'm like and also, you know, you have a knack for having those books that gather so many beautiful things that I want to knit. Last year was the worsted book that you brought with you at Knit City and I remember trying on all the samples one after the other. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't choose which one I wanted to try on. They were all so beautiful. So congratulations for all those
Thank you.
amazing things. And Sasha, what's coming up for you?
Well, the reason why all my needles are occupied, it's because I've been working on a collaboration with Lina. I'm putting out a summer capsule collection early next year.
Oh, that's
Yay.
awesome.
Yes, it's really exciting. So,
Exciting.
yeah, I'm just
So
yeah, go ahead.
sweaters and
A sweater, cardigan, t-shirt, tank top, skirts.
ooh.
Oh, sorry, a skirt, beautiful sarong, and a wrap. Yeah, it's
Oh,
gonna be
that's so
9
exciting.
pieces in total, and a bag
Great.
and a
Well,
fun.
we'll be on the
Amazing.
lookout for that.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think that's the time we have today. So
Okay.
it seems really quick. And I think we'll have much more time to chat during Knit City. So if you're coming to Montreal, come and say hi. Obviously, if you're coming to the Knit Night, we'll be super happy to see you there. But there's also so many other things that are going to be happening during the weekend. I just saw that, Aimée, you have this talk about your book at Knit City, right?
Yes, yes. We've just announced there's going to be a craft talk on Sunday. So if you want to come and join, we're going to talk a little bit about the process of making books and how I kind of arrived at this stage. And I'll be giving you a little studio tour of
That's very
my dye
exciting.
studio here in Paris.
Very
Cool.
cool. So
Well,
that's
I
Sunday at 10?
Huh?
Sorry, you said Sunday at 10?
Yes,
This is
Sunday.
on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay,
Sunday
nice.
morning.
Perfect.
Very
Well,
cool.
I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I hope the people that are listening learned a little something about Aimée, about Sasha, about me, and that you had a fun time, hopefully either knitting on something, drinking your tea, doing your chores, because I saw that some people said that they were happy to listen to some knitting talk while still being productive in the house, which is something I
Yeah.
forget to do because I knit all the time. So yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you very soon. To everybody listening, we'll see you next week with another knit chat. Have
Thanks
a
for
good.
having us, Claudia.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, you're
thank
very
you.
welcome. Thank you. Goodbye. Happy knitting.